Hello, all my beautiful union nerds out there. Welcome to You and I on Air, hosted by myself, Carrie Johnson. I'm currently attending Leadership Academy, and I'm a part of the one-of-a-kind Class 29. Each week, when you attend Leadership Academy, you are tasked to do a project before you return for the next week of class. I came up with this idea of this podcast after one of our facilitators, Keisha Lewis, MBA for Region 1, taught a class on union activism. It got me thinking about how we all have different roles within the union. They vary from being a member to a steward to being on the e-board of your local branch to working for the region or national. And I started to think that based on where you are in your current role, you might recognize and promote union activism in a different way. You might also have certain characteristics at your level in the union that you look for to recruit new activists. Within this episode, you'll hear guests from multiple levels in the hierarchy of the union and their stories of how they became a letter carrier, how and why they joined the union, what positions they hold within the union now, how they promote union activism, and what they look for in up-and-coming activists. I hope you find this podcast informative and helpful to anyone looking to become a member or becoming an activist, as well as different perspectives on why our union is so great. So let's talk to our first guest, a union organizer, the person you usually see at orientation or carrier academy.
My name is Steve Riggs. I am a 54-year member of the NALC. I'm a living, breathing dinosaur in that I carried mail under the old post office department before the USPS existed, starting in June 1st, 1970.
Can you tell me how you became a union activist and what your first position you held in the union was?
Carried mail 16 years, right after the Edmond shooting. And I knew 6 of the 15 people that lost their lives. I had told myself that if those Yahoos asked me to go into management one more time, I'm going to say yes, because I'm going to make a difference where I work. And soon after they did, and so I became a 204B for 9 months, got promoted on the first interview. Immediately after becoming a 204B, they sent me to a station in Oklahoma City I had never worked at. And I had a union steward. It was his first time to be a steward because his former steward had become a full-time vice president in Oklahoma City. Made it my mission to make that a better place to work, including the new union steward in most of the decisions. I loved being a supervisor, working the carriers, approving the sick leave overtime, and a close friendship with that union steward, the first time union steward, and his name happened to be Roger Bledsoe, former national business agent now. After about 2 years, I just determined that management, upper management, was not going to let me continue to do the things I did. So I requested to go back to carrying mail, went to another station. Shortly thereafter, that union steward at that station bid over to my station, where we became best friends, and we still are. He was a union activist, and all he did was ask me to come to union meetings. So I started going to union meetings. I've only been to 2, maybe 3 union meetings in the previous 17 years. But I started going regularly in 1990. Spoke up once or twice at a union meeting. And the president announced we were going to have nominations the next month for a trustee position. That trustee was a man I had known for years and respected him very much. He happened to be sitting behind me that night when the president announced nominations. And I turned around to him and said, Jerry, could I have the honor of nominating you next month? And he said, Steve, I'm not running again, but I think you would make a great trustee. Why don't I nominate you? And it was not until that very moment that I ever even considered myself worthy of holding a union officer position. But he did nominate me. I won the election very handily. There were 4 candidates. I got 76% of the vote. The other 3 candidates shared the other 24%.
That's a really interesting story, Steve. I can't believe you went into management, but then found your way back into the union. Can you tell me, are there any other positions you've held?
10 years later, from the time I was first elected as a trustee, in this only very short 2 years after getting out of management, 10 years later, I was elected president in Oklahoma City, full-time position. Did 1 term. During that term, I retired from the post office. And my opinion is that a local president should be an active letter carrier. Because I had retired, I told my vice president, I said, I've been training you. You're going to run for president. I'm going to run for a job I've never had before, that being the RECSAC. I'd spent time as trustee, financial secretary, vice president, and president. That vice president that I told was running to replace me was named David Miller. Ran him for president. I ran for recording secretary. That was 17 years ago, and I haven't found anybody to take the place yet. So I'm still the RECSAC in Oklahoma City. When I was vice president, the president told me, the first day I was there, he said, oh, by the way, you're the chairman of the food drive. So I became the chairman of the food drive in 2000. Still do that 24 years later. This will be the first year in about 10 years I've not been the statewide coordinator.
So, how did you get involved with doing new employee orientation?
Also, while I was vice president, the president told me they're having an orientation for new employees. You want to go talk to them about joining the union? I said, sure. So I went and did that. I've been doing that some odd years, and it's estimated I have signed up close to 5,000 members into the NALC. I wish they were all still here. I love doing it. I love sharing the history of the post office, the history of the country, the history of the union, and how they are all interconnected. It's an amazing story. It's also an interesting story on how you try to get someone to join the union if you've never met them. And you just share our successes. And it's usually pretty easy. I've been told that my sign-up rate is around 96%. There's probably only 2 people in the country with a higher sign-up percentage than me. And those are, one's in New Jersey and others in New York, and those are union hotbeds. So I feel pretty satisfied with what I've been doing and how I've been doing it.
Sounds like you're very accomplished.
Well, I've had a few jobs. I've had a few details.
Is there anything that you tell new carriers when they're coming in that you think is really important?
My opinion is, and I share this with new young people coming in, if the union asks you to do something, do the absolute best that you can do, and they will ask you to do more. And as they ask you to do more, you will become more widely recognized, not only as a person, but also as a union person.
So when you go to the like the carrier academies and you're trying to get all these new incoming letter carriers pumped up about joining the union, is there anything that you really like to talk about that you think really gets them fired up?
But yeah, I talk about our pay raises. I talk about when I started $2.75 an hour. did not make a decent living. My parents struggled to put food on the table. And at that time when I started, top salary was less than $7,000 a year. And in Oklahoma, you needed $10,000 a year income to be considered successful. If you made 10 grand in 1970, you could buy a new home, you could buy a new car, you could put your kids through college. But you were not going to do that on $7,000 a year, which is what you made after 21 years working at the post office. That's how long it took to get to top step. The union negotiated that down, and now it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 12. They continue to give us pay raises that have elevated us into the middle class, and that's an amazing attribute to the union. I tell those new CCAs, when an arbitrator gave us the CCA position, they had no guaranteed career path. Thanks to the NALC, they do now. They also had no health insurance. Thanks to the NALC, they have the ability to get that. They also had no paid holidays. Thanks to the NALC, they now have 9 paid holidays. It used to be 8 until they added Juneteenth. So also, that's what the story I share with the CCAs, but also talk about if you get in trouble and you are liable to be in trouble at some point in your career, the NALC is there.
In your opinion, what is one of the most important things that you think our union has done for us?
Every single year for 37 straight years that I worked at the post office, because of the union, my salary went up a minimum of $1,500 a year. I'm not saying average, minimum.
So hypothetically, someone slips through the cracks and you don't get them to sign up at orientation. What would you say to that new carrier who you come across that didn't sign up?
You have a son, and the son says, Dad, can I bring my friend to dinner? Yes, bring your friend to dinner. The next day, the son says, Dad, can I bring my friend to dinner? Yes, bring him to dinner. We'll feed him. Well, after about 4 or 5 days of bringing your son's friend to dinner, eventually you're going to say, when is your friend going to start buying some groceries? Well, that's the same thing that a non-member is doing. He is eating at our table. He is eating at our groceries. And after a while, we expect them to start buying some of the groceries. In other words, join the union, pay your union dues, and let us better educate and train people to represent you.
Love that analogy. It's so good. I've heard you do it a few times, but it never gets old because it's so true and it's the most simple and best logical way to present it to somebody.
Having said that, one of those people that I represented in a removal process was not a union member. He flat out told me, he said, Steve, I can't lose my job. I got to have that insurance. Got to pay for that grandbaby. And I said, I will do my best. And that's all we are obligated to do. And I told this guy I would do the best that I can. His case was already at DRT awaiting his removal, and he was going to lose. And I learned this phrase. There's a phrase. I learned it from Roger Bledsoe, the former NBA. Let's find a step between the step, if we can.
So after you met on the case with the postmaster, what ended up happening?
And I called him up and said, you need to come see me. And he said, man, I can't. I'm fixing to leave town. Me and the family's going to Dallas. And I said, no, you're not. You need to come see me right now. So he grumbled a little bit. He said, okay. And he showed up at my office about an hour later. And when he walked in the door of my office, I held up 2 bundles of paper, one in each hand. He said, what's that? I said, well, this here is the paperwork to join the union. This paperwork over here says you're going back to work tomorrow with full back pay, which one do you want first? He said, give me the union paperwork. Should have been a member all along. I just never had joined. He had 20 years in. So there you go.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. Not gonna lie. Okay, so I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Because you've pretty much covered them all just talking to me.
I told you I'd ramble.
That's okay. I like it. It's great. What advice would you give to a new activist? I mean, I know a lot of us, answer the call in some kind of way, be it a steward or, just coming to the meetings or whatever. But is there anything that you would tell somebody who's really looking to get involved and how to stay in it?
Yes. Go to meetings. The world is run by people who go to meetings. So go to the branch meetings. Don't be afraid to speak up, express your opinion, or ask questions. This union will never, ever ask you to do anything illegal or wrong. And if you are tasked with a job, a position, a committee, a title, a task, whatever it is, do it to the best of your ability, and you will be recognized for doing a good job and asked to do more. As you are asked to do more, you will feel more comfortable about what's going on, and ultimately, you may very well decide to run for office yourself. Be sure if you run, you are running for the right reasons and for the right position.
All right, good sir. Well, I'm going to wrap it up and move on to my next interview.
All right, Carrie, thank you and good luck.
Okay, I'll come seek you out next time I'm in the same area you are, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, now it only seems appropriate to move up to my level within the union. I became a letter carrier back in 2015 in Carlsbad, California. Prior to that, I was a transitional employee for about 3 years, but the job that I was doing became obsolete and I got laid off. And I was in California because my husband was stationed at Camp Pendleton, and I got tired of trying to get a job out in town, and so I couldn't seem to get hired anywhere. So I went ahead and applied to the post office again, and I applied for the CCA position, not realizing what kind of position I was actually going to take on. I actually, like most people that I talked to, thought that I literally was going to be just filling in or assisting a regular carrier. Did not realize that I would be working just as much, if not more, than the regular carriers. I became a regular about a year and a half later, and shortly after that, my husband decided he wanted to get out of the military, so I put in my transfer, and we transferred back to Arizona, which is our home state, and I ended up getting transferred to the Sun City installation, which is actually the northwest part of the Phoenix area. I stayed at the main office for a couple of years and decided to transfer down to our sister location, Sun City West, and that's where I currently am. I had always been a union member, even when I was a TE, when I was a CCA. I never really got involved. I never really went to the union meetings. And when I went down to Sun City West, the steward that we had at the time just looked really overwhelmed and super busy. And so I thought I should give her a hand. I could do that. And so I went and talked to the president of the union that I had known from working at the Sun City main office for a couple of years, and asked him if he thought I might be good as a alternate steward. And shortly after that, the steward that was at my location ended up stepping down, so I moved up to be the next steward of Sun City West. The following year was our next election year for the branch, and I decided to continue being the steward at Sun City West and ran to be the steward. And I also decided to run for a trustee position, and I ended up getting both, and that's currently what I still do. As far as my position as a on the job trainer and a steward, I feel that there's a few things that I do at my level to kind of get people involved in the union or kind of gauge how much I think that they will get involved with the union. And I do most of that when they come to the office on shadow day, on the 3 day on the job training, on the workroom floor. If they come to branch meetings, I talk to them at meetings. But most of it's during that beginning training and those 3 days with the shadow day. Um, you kind of do like a little job interview actually while you're riding with them. I have a jump seat in my truck. And so while I am delivering and I'm explaining to them the job and showing them things, in between that, you find yourself having smaller conversations where you end up talking to them and finding out their previous job experience or maybe some of the things that they're interested or like to do. I also look for fellow carriers that come up and ask me questions about the contract, or when they feel like there's something wrong and they bring a concern to me, I take that as an opportunity that they might want to get involved to change whatever that concern is. Enough about me. Let's move on to our next guest speaker, the person who appointed me as steward and started my involvement within the union.
My name is Tom Dunlap. I've been a carrier for 17 years. Um, I was burned out on my last job. I was working retail collections, um, and it just got to the point where I wasn't happy there anymore. And I found out that the post office was allowing the public to take the test. And at the time, the test to become a carrier still was not generally given to the public. So it was a rare opportunity for me.
Are you talking about the test that we don't take anymore?
Yes.
Okay. What encouraged you to join the union itself? So if you think back of like when you had to go through the carrier academy, what really got you to join?
So they did a very good job at orientation of signing up for the union. Their union rep came in, discussed what the union does and how it benefits us as carriers. Um, and then they asked us to sign up right then and there. So I did not fully understand what the union could do or what the benefits were. But the union rep at orientation made a strong case, and I signed up right away.
Why do you think our union is so important?
The union is very important because it allows us to have a job, a dependable job, and a livable wage that we could support our families on. For example, a non unionized job, you don't have the same protections. You could be let go at any time. If you don't like something, if you're being mistreated, if you're being targeted, a lot of times there's nothing you can do about it. And you either have to deal with it or go look for another job. Being part of the union and having recourse through the grievance procedure, I can address things being that are happening in my office to me or to others and try and correct it.
At what point could you kind of narrow down where you stepped up and said, I want to do that. I want to be a steward or I want to get involved?
So it took me about 8 years. The first 8 years, I was just learning the job and doing what I was asked to do. Through that time, though, I started seeing management uh, not doing what they're supposed to do. They would play favorites, they would intimidate people, they would bully people, They wouldn't follow the contract. The rules would apply to some people and not other people. And that started to affect me and make me say, hey, what's going on here? At the time, at that 8 year mark, our vice president at the time, Craig Scholl, worked close to me and started talking to me, trying to get me involved and become a steward at our office.
So I'm assuming your first position you ever held was steward.
Yes, it was.
What position do you hold within the union now?
Right now, I'm an alternate or a backup to the Step B team. The Step B team is part of the dispute resolution process. If a grievance is filed at a local level and it can't be resolved there, it gets sent to the Step B team for them to take another look at it and attempt to get a resolution. The Step B team our Step B team receives grievances from everywhere in the state.
Besides being a steward and now a member of the Step B team, what other positions have you held within the union?
I worked my way up, steward, then vice president, and then president, and now backup alternate, Step B.
What kind of characteristics do you look for when you're looking for an up and coming activist? And I'd like your perspective as when you were president.
You have to have a personality that people connect with, that they feel that they could come and talk to you with their problems, that you're open and willing to fight for them. Attention to detail is very important. Dedication to the job and to the union. Problem solving is a very important skill to have, and the ability to handle stress in a healthy manner and be able to stand your ground in the face of opposition. Experience is good, is a plus, but it's definitely not required.
From a president perspective, what would you look for if you saw somebody showing some type of characteristics of being an activist? Is there anything particular that you look out for?
First, I would look for somebody that comes to the branch meetings, somebody that shows interest, that has questions. A lot of times, people that come to me and ask me questions about contracts, about the contract, or about the working conditions, or what's going on around them, or they don't think so. Somebody that is starting to realize what's going on at the job and that there is a contract that management's supposed to follow, and they have questions about that. And then you just kind of feed that and allow them to grow into whatever position they end up taking.
Based on our current status of our union today, we're kind of in the situation where we're kind of in a divide. We got the tentative agreement that just came out, that kind of thing. Is there any additional comments or statements you'd like to convey in regards to somebody either wanting to join the union, thinking about the union, thinking about getting out, or maybe getting more involved in becoming an activist?
Our strength is in numbers, but through having so many members, not everybody's going to be happy all the time. And if you are unhappy and uninvolved, then get involved. Go to your meetings, vote on issues, go to the national and state conventions, see what's going on and how you can be a part of that. It's rewarding on a different level. There's not much monetary reward, but that's not why we do it. We do it to, like I said before, to improve our working conditions and make the job better for everyone around us.
Okay, next we're moving our way up to the state level. So let's see who our guest speaker is from Colorado State.
My name is Richard Byrne. I'm in Greeley, Colorado, and I became a letter carrier on August 1st, 1998, 26 years ago. I was just in a position for needing a career change. Not really needing a career change, but had a decision to make on whether I was going to continue a career in law enforcement. Um, Being from out of state in Colorado, I moved up here from Texas. And when I moved up here, they changed the law to where I could not laterally transfer. So I had to go back to the academy and start from scratch or start a new career. And so my wife is still in law enforcement, but I chose to, with the suggestion of my grandfather, chose to come to the post office. And 26 years later, here I am.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Now I know something about you. Well, I mean, I was in it for a bit. I did corrections for a couple of years, but what encouraged you to join the union?
I joined the union on day one at the academy. Well, it wasn't, I guess it was a modified academy back then. It was more of just death by PowerPoint. But I joined the union. I knew a little bit about unions when I was a police officer in my previous life. We had the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police in Texas, and they were more of an association. They really couldn't do anything for you because they had no control over your working hours or your wages. They were just one that usually came in and would help if you got pretty deep in something. But and I really don't even know. That never happened to me, so I really never used them. But this was my first experience being involved in an actual union, and so I signed up thinking, "Hey, this is great," and having representation. But signed up at the training from the beginning.
Do you remember that defining moment that you felt that call to the cause? And what was your first union position?
I guess you could actually say my first union position was a safety captain because that had to be approved by the local branch and who the safety captain was. But I had started at the post office and was ready to quit. And the only reason I say I was ready to quit was because coming from a history of law enforcement where you could go out and find work or you never knew what was coming around the next corner, I made regular almost a year to the day from when I started. And back then we got hired as PTFs. And I was so bored because, law enforcement's a whole different animal, but I was going to the same houses, the same streets, everything every day. So being a safety captain and getting involved in safety in my offices really helped change my mental focus on, hey, there's something I can do here. And I was going to union meetings, but I really wasn't engaged at the union meetings. I just sat in the back of the room, and the meetings weren't very encouraging and engaging and that kind of stuff. So, and it could have been me because I didn't insert myself into that. I really wasn't paying attention to that. So, no criticism to the leaders in charge of the branch, but it was just I didn't know what it was about. I was new. So then I got involved in safety. That helped a lot. Became a trustee and eventually worked my way up to I became a steward. Our steward in our branch, in our office at the Greeley main office, was getting ready to retire. So I stepped up to be a steward and then eventually became vice president. And then back in 2012 became the president of the branch. Currently, I am the president for the Colorado State Association of Letter Carriers. I've been in this position almost 2 years. I've been the master facilitator for the Colorado Wyoming District, and I did that from 2016 until 2022. And let's see, I've been on the Joint Safety Task Force for the Colorado Wyoming District. I've been an arbitration advocate for headquarters out of Region 4. I've gone to Leadership Academy, Class 22, the greatest class there ever is. I know everybody says that, but no. Let's see. I've been an NAA, a Nationally Assigned Assistant, previously known as an LBA, which was called a local business agent. They switched it to NAA, and I've helped many branches, smaller offices, or I should say smaller branches that just didn't have representation and have traveled around doing that, which I love. But yeah, it's just I'm always there, ready to help letter carriers in their time of need, branches, whatever, to offer any wisdom or guidance um, that they need to uh, help protect letter carriers and hold management accountable for their actions.
Well, I totally get the board thing. I share that so much. There's a certain point where it's like you master it and then you're just it's Groundhog Day movie. Every single day, every street, every house, every customer, same lines, the same people. And that's how I did it too. I was like, I gotta learn something new or I'm gonna quit. You gotta teach me something new.
For the state association, I was the director of education. I was the vice president and also a LICL, a letter carrier congressional liaison. So those going to DC, I've been to DC like 7 times and going up on the Hill and fighting for letter carriers and just seeing the whole process on how the legislative stuff happens. That's been pretty cool too, because there's no way I would have ever been offered that working in law enforcement.
How would you define union activism and how do you feel like you use that in your current role?
So I think union activism is, you could look at that on many different levels, where it's local to where you want to step up and help represent your fellow members, maybe be eyes and ears and just maybe write a statement. But on a legislative aspect, is being my current role as the president of the Colorado State Association of Letter Carriers. Being an activist is one thing where we want to educate the members on where they can take action on legislative and just be informed, because many people don't watch the news. They don't keep up with what's going on. They don't even read their postal record. I mean, the money that is spent to get the publications out to the members, and they just throw them in the trash or whatever. But we need to be able to get to those people and help them be educated so they can become activists, because it takes all of us. Yes, we're all in the union together, but it takes all of us to be knowledgeable about what's going on and to be that um, active activist where you can step up and help your fellow coworkers on the workroom floor, help teach, um, help encourage, and help invest in others so that we can be more successful as a union. And that starts at the top and works its way down. And you just have to be able to understand that we need to encourage each other along the way, because so many times it does get lost along the way, and we just need to try not to get discouraged and reinforce it.
So, as a state president, do you feel like there's certain characteristics that you look for when you notice maybe a new up and coming activist?
Definitely. I can speak personally on that. We had several people who ran for the executive board in Colorado this last time, and we only have limited positions. But it was great to see so many people wanting to step up and be there for their members throughout Colorado. But that gave me the opportunity to work with the previous president, Doug Janes, and say, hey, I mean, I'm one of those that I like to think outside the box. How can we do things? And we actually created a position for someone who did not get elected, but it's been really pushed by headquarters on the letter carrier political fund. So we created a letter carrier political fund coordinator for the state of Colorado, and he has just hit the ground running and been doing great on that. He's very active politically. He's made a lot of contacts, not only through our state legislators, but our congressional legislators up in DC and different congressional districts, goes out to the branches and talks to those branch presidents. And it's been great. So it's good when you see a spark in someone and it's like, okay, they want to do something, but maybe their branch is holding them back. it's good to see that spark in people. And like I said before, especially if their branch is holding them back and not letting them step up, if there's a way we can do that through the state association, it's great because we even have a couple of people who we have three LCCLs that have retired, and so now we've looked for those little sparks out there in the field. Who is interested? Who's politics sucks. I mean, it's ugly, but it's one of those things that who's interested in it and who wants to give it a shot. So we're getting them up and trained.
What advice would you give to a new activist?
Don't give up, ask questions, and do your own research. Don't assume that someone you're talking to knows all the answers. Years ago, I had a guy that I could walk up to on the workroom floor at any given moment, and he always had the answer for me. And I was impressed as hell. I was just like, man, this guy knows his stuff. And after a few years of being a steward, I realized he didn't know half of what he was telling me because he always had an answer, but it wasn't always right. So don't be afraid to tell someone, I don't know the answer. I'm going to look it up and I'll get back with you. And one thing I've learned over the years from people who are much smarter than I is that it's good to show someone where to find that answer and show them the answer because that way they can feel rest assured that you're not bullshitting them and just saying, hey, throwing an answer out to them, that you are actually doing your research and you're investing in them by listening to them, which is the key. Always listen, and then doing the research to give them the correct answer.
Thank you, Richard, for taking time to come onto the podcast. Let's move on up to the region level and see who our next guest speaker is.
My name is John Robles. I'm the Region 4 Regional Administrative Assistant. I became a letter carrier back in 1998. I had a pretty decent job. At the time, I was 29 years old, almost 30, and I had a pretty decent job with pretty decent pay. And my brother was a postal worker. He was a clerk in Boulder, Colorado. And he called me one day and said, hey, the Postal Service is hiring. And I said, so? And that's just my rapport with my brother. And he said, so they have good benefits. And I said, well, what do you mean? So right away, he caught my attention because I had a good job with good pay, but I didn't have any benefits. I didn't have sick leave. I didn't have vacation leave. I didn't have retirement. I didn't have the employer paying for any sort of health insurance. None of that. I just had a job where I showed up to work and got a paycheck. And so he started telling me about the benefits that the Postal Service had. And so I figured, all right, well, I'll just take the test because back then we took a test amongst a whole bunch of people. Went to this huge warehouse, took the test. Can't remember what I scored, but I got a call about 3 months later. Went in for the interview, heard more about the benefit package, and that got me right there because at the time I had, I was, married, had one daughter, and I needed to get them insured. I needed to start, a retirement savings. And hey, now I could take a vacation. So that's what got me into the Postal Service.
Your story is very much like a lot of people, honestly. What encouraged you to join the union?
It didn't take much. I had a job in my early 20s at Safeway. Joined the union there, was a part of the union. And so I knew a little bit about unions with that job at the UFCW, United Food Workers. I think it was Local 7. When I went to orientation, we had a few speakers from the union. One of my mentors to this day. He actually works in the office at Region 4 with us. He's the RGA, Jeff Hartman. At the time, he was secretary treasurer of our branch, 5996. And him and another individual gave the speech about the union. And it wasn't like they had to twist my arm or anything. Like I said, I was in a union before. I knew what unions did. And so it didn't take much. I signed up at orientation.
How would you define unionism?
To me, unionism is caring about everyone and not just yourself. I think any individual can easily go in and punch in and punch out, do their jobs and just kind of be left alone or whatever. But unionism is, to me, watching out for your coworkers, watching out for your brothers and sisters. And that's kind of what got me right away. Just from the first day that I clocked in, I I noticed right away management mistreating other individuals. They they seemed to pick on people who couldn't speak up for themselves, and uh, so I knew that. Well, I didn't know then, but I started learning very quickly that uh, the union and its activists, um, just on the workroom floor, can help to protect one another. And so I started learning the contract right away. I got a copy of the contract back at orientation when I signed up. I would get home at night and read the contract and learn what it was about. And I thought there's a lot we can do. And every day that I went into work, I I saw things that were happening, and I'm thinking about the national agreement saying, well, we shouldn't be allowing that to happen. And so um, I started to go to meetings, because you know what it's like on the workroom floor. There's only a very small percentage of people that are active in the union, that you know breathe unionism. They really think about that all the time. There's only just a few people, and I was in a small station at the time. So started going to the union meetings, and I started seeing all these radical people. I thought they were radical because they had these, you know, they just had voices, and they spoke up, and they spoke against what was wrong. And I thought, this is a pretty cool place to be, you know. And I thought that I could do my part in my station, my little corner of the world, to help promote unionism and togetherness, so that we could be stronger on the workroom floor as far as just protecting our rights. You know, I mean that's kind of how I see unionism.
What was your first position in the union?
My first position in the union was a steward, and it did not take long at all. Like I said, I was, you know, reading the contract from day one, and I got hired August 1st, 1998. So there was elections that year, and of course nominations are usually around October or so. And so it only took a few meetings that I went to, and a lot of questions. Uh, there was some chatter on the workroom floor one morning when I was waiting to clock in, and I believe it was the end of the quarter. Um, right? So you're talking end of September. So I'd only been there on the workroom floor for maybe 6 weeks or so. And there were some people upset because the steward, they were asking the steward, why am I getting makeups? Why am I not getting money? I was X amount of hours behind. And the steward said, just be happy that you're getting your makeups. I didn't have time to go through all that. So I'm standing there, I'm not speaking out, right? I've only been there, not even 2 months on the workroom floor. But I go home that night and I open up the national agreement and I'm looking and I'm looking at, well, wait a second. What does he mean he doesn't have time? It says right here that stewards get paid time on the clock to investigate and process and meet on grievances. And so couldn't keep my mouth shut the next day. So we're standing at the time clock waiting to clock in, and I asked the question to the steward and I said, "Hey, I heard you talking yesterday. I heard you tell all these guys you didn't have time to file the grievance or work out whatever you had to work out. Not quite sure what you were doing, but don't you get paid on the clock to do all that stuff?" And he gave me this dirty look and he says there's a union meeting first Tuesday in October. He goes, "You need to go." And I said, "Okay." So he explained himself later. Anyway, long story short, I go to the meeting. He says to me, he says, sit next to me. He goes, "We're having nominations for steward tonight." He goes, "I think you're a smart guy. Obviously, you've read some of the contract already. And so why don't you like be my alternate steward? I could talk the president into, you being my alternate steward, and I could kind of phase out because I'm looking on, stepping back pretty soon, and then you could take over as steward." And like I'm on the spot right here, right? The meeting's about to start, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't even know what any of that meant. So gets time for nominations, and they're nominating for our station. He raises his hand and he nominates me for steward. And I kind of look at him like, I didn't know that was the plan. So after the meeting, he's like, "No, you know what I'll do?" He goes, "You can be steward, but I'll be your alternate, and I'll help you along the way, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine." So it goes uncontested. So I'm steward all of a sudden, barely 3 months. Well, it had to take place mid-December, I think is when it was. But basically 5 months into my career, I was a steward. And the first day that I was a steward, we're standing at the time clock, ready to clock in, and he comes up. I'm not going to say who he is, but he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, John," he goes, "I changed my mind. I really don't want to be the alternate steward or anything like that. So you'll be okay." He goes, "Here's Jeff Hartman's number. You met him at orientation. He's a smart guy. If you have any questions, give him a call." And so I was left high and dry. And the very first day I had a very disgruntled old Vietnam War vet upset because a manager told him to take he had a sticker on his case that said, "My president is Charlton Heston." And basically what that was it was a sticker for the NRA. And then he had also had a picture of the battleship that he served on. And the supervisor had said it was offensive because there was guns on it. Well, I thought that was bullshit because he's a Vietnam vet, and those weren't offensive. And so it was a tough one to navigate that first day. But I called Jeff Hartman, and he says, "Well," he goes, "go look at other people's cases, see what they have. Is there anything anybody else has that one might find offensive?" And so I walk into we had a HR person in the station at the time, this old crotchety lady. And I walk in there and she's got a filing cabinet with a picture of somebody with a gun. And she goes, "Can I help you?" And I just looked at that sticker and I said, "No, I'm okay." And I turned around and walked out, filed the grievance. It was good from there. First win, and that was it, man. I mean, I just really took on to the job. I liked representing people. I mean, how can you tell a Vietnam vet to take down a picture of the ship that he served on. That's the kind of stuff that just really gets to me, even to this day. So that was my first position, union steward. Was a union steward for 18 years until I got the RAA position. I did other stuff in between and in addition to, but I always liked being that ground level steward, whether I was doing Formal A, whether I was doing joint route processes or going on details and stuff like that. I always enjoyed being that ground level steward, and I didn't have to give that up for 18 years.
Well, based on your last answer, that leads me right into my next question. What other union positions have you held?
Oh boy. All right, let's see. So, steward for 18 years. I was Formal A off and on for I don't know how many years. I was trustee of the branch for 6 years. I was vice president of the Colorado State Association for some amount of years. I don't remember. All up until I had to take the RAA position. And so since 2007, there have been multiple joint route adjustment processes in which I was detailed to. From the very first one in 2007, there was IRAP, the interim alternate route adjustment process. I was a local office contact for that. And then after that came MIRAP, the modified interim alternate route adjustment process. And that was about a year later. I was a route evaluation and adjustment team member, or a REAT, as most people know it. And then there was a couple of years where we weren't in a joint process, but then I want to say 2010, we had JRAP, the joint alternate route adjustment process. I was at that time, I was elevated to the district lead team for that, for all of Colorado, Wyoming. And then JRAP 2011, I held the same role in that. We didn't have another joint process until CDRAP, the city delivery route alternative adjustment process. And that was in 2015, and I was DLT again for that. So those details, I think, are what got me. Of course, being a DLT, you're working directly with the National Business Agent's office. And so that's where I got to know our national business agent, retired Roger Bledsoe. And at the time, the RAAs were Ray Tillman and Dan Versluis. And so Ray oversaw the joint route adjustment processes. And I got to know him more so than anybody else. During that time, we would have issues that were elevated up to their level and above. And so they started to see how I reasoned, how I wrote up my position papers for our disputes. And Ray was on vacation one time, and so Dan Versluis had taken over for him. And so I had to send up a dispute to Dan, and he kind of took notice of how I wrote up my position. And so he asked me if I ever considered being an arbitration advocate, which I had never considered before. So he said, "Hey, I think you'd be good at it." So he had me be a technical assistant in a few arbitration cases. It seemed very interesting. And so I got accepted to advocacy training, and that was back in 2012. And so I've been an arbitration advocate since 2012. To me, the two hardest jobs in our union is being that ground level steward and an arbitration advocate, whether you're taking that case from its beginnings or at the very last step. And I'm lucky to say I've been able to do both, and I really enjoy both. So arbitration advocate, and not really a position, but a year later in 2013, late 2012, I got accepted to the Leadership Academy. But it, just kept doing everything, all that stuff, until I was asked to work for Region 4 in the NVA's office as a regional administrative assistant. I got that job in early 2016 and have been here ever since.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Clearly, you know a lot about routes.
That is my forte.
Okay, so since I'm doing my podcast on union activism, from the position that you hold now, how would you say that you promote union activism?
I know this is going to sound silly to some people, but you can't you can't be a union activist without loving the job. And I'm not talking about loving being a steward. I'm talking about, if we represent letter carriers, you have to love carrying mail. And so to promote union activism, if I want somebody to get involved, I have to look at where they're, kind of see where their heart comes from. Because some people, you can tell, unfortunately, they may want a position of anything other than carrying mail. To me, that doesn't make for a good union activist. I mean, there might be some people that are smart, but at the end of it all, you really have to care about the people that do the work. I mean, that's going to get the most out of being an activist, right? You have to have a passion for carrying mail. And so when I promote it, first off, I'm kind of seeking out people who actually love the job, and they may not like their supervisor or their postmaster or whatever, but they generally like the post office and what they do, and they're very proud to wear the uniform, right? So that's kind of what I look for. And so once I see somebody like that, uh, I just I just kind of get a feel for, you get to know individuals, and being a steward isn't for everybody, but they could still be a union activist, right? They can take part in community services, whether they like, they're really involved with the food drive, or Veterans Affairs. I mean, anything. And so you got to get a feel for what people like, what they enjoy, what they want to do, and just kind of take it from there. Um, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna sit there and try to force somebody to get involved. You could be a union member, and like I said earlier, you could be a union member, swipe your badge in and out every day, and that's fine. That's what most people do. But to promote union activism, you just got to seek out people, see what they like, and make sure that they love doing the job. I mean, I could tell you right now, if my job ended today, uh, well, I'd probably have to find some different size pants to put on, but I would love to just get back in that truck and start delivering my route again. That's how much I love carrying mail. But to me, that's all part of it. I mean, that's the whole thing. And I know I told you it would sound silly, but if you love the job, um, the union is what made our job what it is. Our benefits, everything that we do, the route protection, all that stuff, and you just educate with that. You know, some people, you know, again, that you have to explain to them, you know, it's not just it's not just what you see on the workroom floor that is, like some people just see their steward and say that's the union. You have to educate people and say that's just a piece of it. That's just a piece of it. If you like your steward, well, guess what? You know, your dues money goes towards somebody educated that steward, right? Somebody sent that steward to stewards college or whatever. It's just bits and pieces of knowledge every day on the workroom floor, so people have an understanding of what we do, and it's not just going in the office to do an investigative interview with somebody. It's everything. If when you're promoting the food drive, you don't just, oh, it's the second Saturday in May every year. You don't just you don't stop there. Why? How did it come about? And if you tell somebody how it started, right? Which it started in the state of Arizona where you're at, right? But if you tell people that, and you explain it's interesting. It's more interesting than just saying, well, this is what we do every year, right? Or when we do MDA fundraisers, right? How did that start? You know, that started a long time ago. The Porch Light Brigade. People don't know what that is, you know? So, how do I promote union activism? You got to love the job, and then you got to educate people about everything that we do. Everything that we do. And this goes back to the 8-hour work law. This goes back to everything that we have. You have to educate people. That's how I promote it. I try to know my history, and I'm not shy about letting people know what our background is.
Well, you're so good at this because I feel like every time you answer something, you lead right into the next thing I was going to say. So, since you were talking about education, um, when you're going around and doing Stewards College and things like that, and you're educating members and new up and coming activists, are there any characteristics that you look for to identify, hey, I think this person would be really good at this and promote people to step up and do the next thing?
It's a constant look. We're not just at, or at least me, I'm not just out there to teach and stand up on a podium and say what I have to say and go on my way and not pay attention to who's in the audience. That is equally as important as what we're teaching. Because I don't want it. One of these days I'm going to vacate this job, and whether it's to take another position or whether it's to sail off into retirement. I mean, who knows, right? But we all move on through the courses of our career, and you have to, if the union, any union, if our union is going to survive, we have to educate people so that they're better than we ever were. Like I want, when I leave my position, I want the person who takes my place to be 10 times, you know, I mean, just forget about me. Yeah, he's been gone for 2 months. I don't even remember that guy anymore, because the next person is we have developed that person. And so it's very important to seek out those people. What I do when I'm out is basically what I said before. I seek people out and I talk to them. You got to get to know people, and I guess I'm a pretty good judge of character, but what I want to know is where's your passion as far as the job is concerned. I mean, I've had people come up, you know as many conversations that have gone great, with people, and finding those people that say, yeah, we gotta bring this person up. We gotta keep this person interested and involved. As many of those good things that those good people that we've sought out, I've had conversations where I could tell right away. Somebody comes up, said, "So, how'd you get here? What do I have to do to get into your position?" Well, I can't answer that question. I mean, are you, you know, I just did what I always did, you know, and I tell those because some people, again, they're just looking to get out of doing what they're doing. And when I hear stuff like that, it really turns me off. What I tell people, look, there's nothing wrong with having ambition. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with seeing where you're going to be at in 5 or 10 years, or having that ambition to be somewhere in 5 or 10 years. But it has to be from the passion that that's why you want it, not because you want this job, or you think it's glamorous, or yeah, right, whatever, but you have to you just have to do what you're doing as best as you can right now, whatever position you're doing. If you're a steward in a station, be the best steward that you could possibly be. Keep learning every day. We have 5 states in our region. We have an NBA and 2 RAAs in the office that represent almost 15,000 people, you know. So do what you do it as best as you can. I guess in a nutshell, there's 3 things that I look for, right? It's where's your drive coming from? Is it your your heart, your passion for letter carriers and the job that you do for the United States Postal Service? Um, are you willing to, uh, you know, just do the best that you can in whatever you've been asked to do at the time, and not rush through things, trying to get to some place or catapult to some place? And then finally, just sharing your knowledge the whole way through your career, because that's what's going to make other people better.
Let's say, heaven forbid, you come across a carrier who hasn't joined the union. What would you say to that new carrier to get them to consider actually joining our union?
If I'm doing an orientation class, which I go to the district office and I do them every once in a while with our organizers, what I talk about again is not just, hey, sign the paper, you'll get representation. It's not just, if you have an hour to speak to a group of people, for me, it's explaining again history. If you explain history, if you explain what particularly what the NALC union has done, right? Um, Going all the way back to our inception, like, you show them that history and how long we've been around, how long the Postal Service has been around. That hits a lot of people, and usually what I'll do in a group setting is I will open it up to any questions, because if you don't do that and you just stick to a script, you're going to be missing some people. You have to open yourself up to be able to explain things, and you're not going to. I'm not saying put a bow on it and make it look nice and rosy, but answer the questions honestly.
What do you think are some of the common reasons that people don't join the union?
Going back to one of your first questions, that the steward didn't file on that quarterly grievance and screwed him out of $1,000. I mean, whatever. Usually it's a bad experience that they had, right? Um, Sometimes people will give you that excuse that they can't afford it, right? If they tell you that, then, I think uh, Steve Riggs, one of our organizers in Oklahoma, said it best I mean, maybe you wouldn't have food on the table if 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 you didn't have this job that the union got you the salary that you're getting. So, maybe you might want to do your part and pay your dues. Try to let them know that, hey, I'm your representative now. And if I can help it, that will not happen on my watch. So, would you be willing to give it another chance?
Well, that's it. That's all I got for you.
That's all you got for me?
That's all I got for you. Okay, next up is my very own Region 4 National Business Agent. Let's hear what he has to say.
Yes, my name is Dan Versluis. I became a letter carrier after I was in the Marine Corps, and unfortunately, I was injured in the Marine Corps and went back to my hometown and got a letter in the mail that said, would you be interested in taking the postal test? And I got to tell you, I was looking for something because I had a very young family. I was looking for something with some benefits. And so with retirement and sick leave and health benefits was my number one thing because I had two young kids. And so I applied, and 3 years later, I got the call. And for a TE job, I turned that down. And then in 1993, I got another offer for a part-time flexible, and I jumped at it. And gosh, the rest is history.
So, what encouraged you to join the union?
Well, I would say the biggest thing that encouraged me to join the union, I think, was the carriers on the workroom floor at my first station, which was Cherry Bell in Tucson, Arizona. And back then, it seemed like there was a lot of camaraderie. The carriers were very friendly. They welcomed me in. A couple of the more senior carriers kind of took me under their wing. And so that was a huge influence. Also, being born and raised in Arizona, we're a right to work state. And I really didn't have that much knowledge about unions. And one of the things that I found out was that being a member of the NALC, you have the right to your own voice and your own vote in shaping the future of our union. And when I found that out, that was it. They had me by, the hook, line, and sinker. So I was sold right then and there.
Why do you think our union in particular is so important?
Well, I got to tell you, I think, working for the federal government, I think, at times, we can work for a very difficult employer. And it seems like the day that I walked in, it was a little bit of tension between letter carriers, workers, and management folks. And so I found out probably within my first 2 weeks of being in a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service, that's why unions were so important. I had issues right away, and my union stewards were there, and they, again, helped me along the way. So I don't think that I would have even stuck it out had I not had the influence of the union there. And in fact, I think the very first meeting that I ever attended, I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the contract. I hadn't read anything. And I was working usually every day from 4:30 in the morning, doing the University of Arizona run, come back, I would carry a full route. And then when I'd get back from that, I would go out on a collection route. So I was working anywhere from 70 to 80 hours per week. I got off early enough to where I could still attend my very first union meeting. I didn't know what to do. I was a little shy of standing up in front of all those people there. I raised my hand and I asked them, how do you ask for time off so you can go cash your check? And it was amazing right away, the questions that came out. And they said, what do you mean? And of course, I had to explain, I've been working this many hours. The very next morning, I walked into the office and my president at that time had called my manager and said, you know, you're violating the contract. You can't do that. Let the guy go cash his checks. And so I had 2 checks uncashed because that was the old days when we did the paper checks, didn't have direct deposit. And so, yeah, I think just all those things and all along with my career has been the same thing. There's always somebody that's willing to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And I loved it, fell in love with it.
Can you describe the moment that you were called to the cause and what first union position you held?
Okay, so that's funny that you asked that because it was about a month after I started.
Oh, wow.
And I was on the working floor again. That was my first station. I was a PTF. I was on probation. And I witnessed basically almost on a daily basis where the manager would walk up to a certain carrier, and his name was Ted. I won't give you his last name. And she would just pick at him, telling him he was too slow, he was old, he was making everybody else do part of his work, and he should be ashamed of himself, and his family should be ashamed of himself. And I heard this stuff almost every day. And at that time, being on probation, I was like, I felt like they could fire you in an instant. So I couldn't say anything that I wanted to say at that point in time. But I did talk to my stewards there at the station, and I became the eyes and ears for them to help them out to battle that stuff. But it really hit me. And this was probably 1 month, almost a month to the day after I had joined, where this older gentleman, nice as can be, very proud, veteran of the armed services and a veteran carrier as well, broke down into tears in front of everyone and all of his coworkers. And that right there solidified where I felt my place was, and I had to get more involved. And so basically I helped out my union stewards. About 4.5 months later, I was moved to the Coronado station, where I became like an alternate steward. And then I ran the first time the steward elections were held at the station, and I won my first election, and I had fun bringing back the balance in that station between union and management.
Nice. Okay, so besides your first position, can you tell me what other positions you've held within the union?
Yes, so not only steward, of course, I was a step 2 designee. That was before the grievance process changed over in 2000, 2001. Then I was Formal A. In 2001, I also went to NALC advocacy school. So I became a NALC arbitration advocate. Let's see, I was trustee. I was elected as trustee of the branch back in 1999, maybe. I was vice president in 2000. And then, of course, in 2002, I ran for branch president of my branch and was elected and took office in 2003. Let's see. I Step B certified. I was a regional administrative assistant appointed by President Fred Rolando, and ran for NBA in 2018, and I won that election. So I think that covers most of it. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I was director of education for the Arizona State Association of Letter Carriers and vice president for them as well, up until I was appointed to the NBA's office as a regional administrative assistant in 2010.
Well, it sounds like you've done a lot.
A couple things.
So, if you had to define what union activism is, how would you define it?
So I think union activism is staying true to your heart. I think union activists, they have this special place in their heart for compassion and care for their coworkers and families, of letter carriers. I think they are truly compassionate and they want to see justice served. So we see a lot of the wrongs and injustices in the Postal Service, and I think we are the activists, NALC activists, are the ones that are that buffer between, again, employee and management. And so I guess that's the best way I could describe it, where you represent letter carriers to the best of your ability, and you listen to them with care and compassion, and you never forget that it's all about letter carriers. It's not about egos. It's not about power. I think it all boils down to care and compassion for other human beings, especially in the same category as us, all letter carriers. So hope that works.
How do you promote union activism in your current role?
Kind of what I do right now is I attend as many functions as I can that I'm invited to. So there's always a personal aspect of the union, and in fact, kind of like a social aspect. I look at union meetings and picnics and other gatherings a lot of times, not only a little bit of business, but also as a social aspect. So you really want to get to know the people that you work with. And so in doing so, you start to see those people that shine a little bit. They have a little bit of that thing that I call, where you can see it on the outside, their heart is bigger, or just compassionate about people. And so promoting activism, I think, is showing that we do care, that we are involved, being able to take the time to really listen to somebody and understand their problem, and then take action to help that person out. And so, or that group out, right? Because it can be groups at a time. And so at my level, I think, when I first started out as a steward, I was really concentrating on just the folks that were in my station. As branch president, I really concentrated on the members of my branch. And now as a national business agent, you concentrate on the entire region, and knowing that when you make a decision in one place, you're going to have to follow through. So you try to make always the right decision in every issue that you deal with, because I guarantee you, that issue will come up, and people look at that. If you can tell somebody, or if you can discuss with somebody the right recourse to follow, and it's not just, I hate to say this, but pulling it out of thin air and creating something just to make them go away, that's never going to work. So promoting activism, giving people the empowerment to also help themselves, right? You help them the first time, and you try to make sure that they learn from that experience. And then hopefully it's one of those people that go, wow, that was amazing. He really helped me. I want to get more involved. And so sometimes, just by doing your job every day and paying attention to, the members and their needs, I think that promotes that activism and gets more people involved because they see that we can be successful if we stick together.
As you're traveling around and you're going to all these functions, is there any characteristics that you look for up and coming activists?
Yes. And there are multiple characteristics that I think I look for. First of all, like we do our stewards trainings and conventions every year. At a stewards training, one of the things that I look for is, first of all, is interest. There are some people that are there that really don't pay really much attention. There are also people there that pay a lot of attention. And when you're up there instructing in a class about a certain subject, and you look out at the audience, and all of a sudden you see the light bulb go off in somebody's head, they get something, that is the most exciting thing. And then you see them 2 days later, and they're calling you back and saying, hey, that really worked. Oh my gosh, it was super successful. So it's the interest that I look at in people. And then also people that ask questions. Looking for individuals that are willing to learn, somebody that truly wants to learn, about our rights and how to enforce them. That to me is very important. And many times you don't even have to seek people out. They will seek you out as well. And so, but I always keep my eyes open for that. And not just in the representational end, right? We get people that they excel with food drive or, fundraising events for MDA or the NELC Disaster Relief Foundation, things like that. There's all kinds of excitement in that. And I really love to work around those people because that gives me actually energy. I build off of it. I look for people with an open mind also, because they're unfortunately nowadays people sometimes have a narrow view. They will only take in so much, and then they're not willing to look at other options on the outside to maybe expand what they're working on. And so I do like to look at that, somebody with an open mind, willing to explore, go a little outside of their comfort zone. I think that's a huge thing for some people to do. For some people it's hard, for some people it's easy, but I encourage it all the time, and I will help and assist anything that I can do to do so. And then, I look for somebody that also, especially after they've been introduced to the union and they're spending some time, I look for someone who understands our role. The union's role. I mean, there are some people out there that think that we have a magic wand and we can fix all the woes of the post office. And unfortunately, we don't own the post office. We have a contract with the post office, and we're limited basically to the terms of our contract with them, and also our political legislative activities, which have been very, 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 very successful over the last 100 or so years. And so, I look for somebody that, just like I said, understands our role. it's not self-serving, and certainly not ego-driven, right? I look for that person that's compassionate for others.
Being a new activist myself, I've only been a steward and a trustee, and now I'm at Leadership Academy, which is a fantastic opportunity. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's stepping up to be a new activist? Is there anything that you would, maybe caution them, or, ways to avoid burnout or anything like that?
Yes. So my first bit of advice to anyone that really wants to get involved is learn about time management and have a good personal life, work-life balance. That's something that I'm still trying to work on myself. I got to tell you that's been the hardest thing for me, because if there's a need, I always feel like I want to jump and I want to help. So that's number one. Stay true to yourself. That's another one. You have to be careful of the people that are around you and the influences that affect you, because unfortunately, if you get in front of a group that all negative all the time, and you start picking that up, you will start to reflect that. So you have to stay true to yourself. You have to face adversity head on. You can't run and hide. You can't duck around. You can't jump over. You got to face it head on, and you go for it. Don't be scared to do it. The only thing that you can do is, if you lose, you didn't lose anything because they already did it. If you win, it's 100%, right? You win. And so you may win somebody's rights to their annual leave or whatever that issue may be. You're going to be successful. And so, face that adversity head on, read and learn as much possible about the NALC's very rich history, about the USPS rules and regulations, and about our contract. And my biggest piece of advice to anyone, whether you're starting out new or you are a very long-time veteran of the NALC, don't ever forget that everything that we do is all about letter carriers. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about all of us. And if you keep that in mind when you make your decisions, I don't think you can go wrong.
Good advice.
Thanks.
Okay, so last question. Let's say you come across a carrier who somehow slipped through the cracks at orientation and didn't decide to join the union. What would you say to that carrier who's kind of on the fence about whether they should join or not?
Well, it's funny. We run into those folks all the time. First of all, most of the time, they get a hold of you when there's a need. They're either in trouble, they got hurt at work, there's absolutely a need. So the biggest thing that you can do is, first of all, show them that you represent all letter carriers. That's what the union is all about, not just members. But I'm going to promote the union by, first of all, my actions. Also going to tell them the benefits of that, of becoming a member, and encouraging them to get involved. Do you want to be part of this group that shapes your future and the future of letter carriers that are going to be coming in and joining the Postal Service well after you're, have already started your entire career, or you're at the very end of your career, right? It's a pretty darn good feeling when you can talk to folks like that. They join and then they see the benefits right away. It's an awesome feeling. And so that would probably be my advice to those people who have slipped through the cracks. Even if you have to put it on your calendar every month to make sure you go back and you visit them, we don't want to, feel like we're pressing them, but I always like to do that reminder for those ones that at least I used to have in my station until I had 100% membership. It took me about 2 years to get everybody in my station in the union, but boy, I tell you what, those ones were really tough. The last two were really, really tough. And every month I went over there, I talked to them, said good morning. I treat them just like anybody else, and encouraged them to join. Finally, they did. And so work is never done, but but I got to tell you, when you have 100% membership, that speaks loudly to management, and they know that they're not just going to be able to get away with, trying to pull a fast one on letter carriers. We all stick together, and that's our power.
Well, you've officially survived my interview.
All right. Outstanding. Well, I know you're going to probably cut the heck out of it. That's great.
Yeah, I'm going to have to, try and get you all into like an hour just for the podcast part of it. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to make a whole series out of it at this point.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome.
If you've made it this far, thanks for hanging in. I know it's been a long episode, but we only have 2 more guests. The next guest is a current facilitator of the Leadership Academy and the one who gave me the inspiration to do this podcast.
My name is Keisha Lewis, and I became a letter carrier because my mom was a clerk for the Postal Service. So that brought about interest for me to decide to take a test to join the post office. And it took about a year for everything to go through, but I got hired in 1994 as a PTF letter carrier.
And after becoming a letter carrier, can you tell me what encouraged you to join the union?
Yes, I had a supervisor that was very hard on female letter carriers, and she would go after the female letter carriers. And because I would not cry, it caused her to target me as a letter carrier, and I had a lot of discipline. And I just got frustrated and figured I need to learn my rights, and that's how I got involved in the union.
So once you got involved with the union and after experiencing something like that, can you tell me what your first union position was?
I was actually an alternate shop steward because I was intrigued by learning my rights, and they actually did not want to recognize me as a shop steward because I was very intrigued, and because a lot of things that management would say would be a lie. So as an alternate, like people would tell me things, and as an alternate shop steward, you could not do things if the regular letter carrier was off work. So once the regular shop steward was off work. So when that regular shop steward was off, I could not wait to file grievances when they was off work because I was excited because I was learning things, and I wanted to make sure that I enforced the contract. So one of the officers at my branch was like, he's just doing more work than the regular shop steward. So then they switched us and made me the regular shop steward and made that regular shop steward the alternate. And I felt really bad because that person had been a shop steward for a very long time, and I had admired them. So that kind of hurt me a little bit because I didn't want to overstep their toes, but then that's how I became a regular shop steward.
Besides being an alternate union steward, what other positions have you held within the union?
Okay, so that's the first position that I held. I was an alternate shop steward, and then I became a regular shop steward. And then my branch is Garden Grove Branch 1100. It's the largest branch in the country. And so we have what we call an area shop steward, where we visit, do a station visit to at least all the offices in our branch. And as an area shop steward, you have to visit 2 post offices a month. So then I became an area shop steward for my branch, and then I started doing workers' compensation. And then in 2007, I became a full-time officer in my branch doing workers' compensation. And then I became a vice president for my branch, and then a senior vice president, and then vice president, senior vice president, executive vice president, and then a branch president.
Holy cow.
And then national business agent, currently the national business agent for Region 1.
So, what led you to the Leadership Academy?
Oh, I started doing the Leadership Academy in 2018. I think Jamie Lum had asked me, he was the director of education, was I interested in becoming an instructor in the Leadership Academy? And then President Renfro had asked me, was I interested in becoming an instructor in the Leadership Academy? And I had attended the Leadership Academy in 2011, and then you're going to see in week 3 of the Leadership Academy, there's something called paying it forward. And that's something that I've always done since leaving the Leadership Academy, is to pay it forward. And so I thought it would be an honor to become an instructor and to continue to pay it forward for our union.
Wow, that's pretty cool. How do you promote union activism within your current role? And I would say more from the perspective as a facilitator than an MBA.
By what we do in the Leadership Academy, for the most part, and making sure that the students of the Leadership Academy understand the importance of, it's not just one person, because a lot of people feel that it's like they have to do everything, and the union is not just one person. So to make our union to become strong and continue to become strong, you have to get other people involved. And like one of the things that you can do to get other people involved is what you're doing with your podcast. Other people will hear your podcast, and then they might have ideas. So a lot of people get frustrated, and they may say, hey, I want to quit the union, but the union is never, it should never be one person. It may start off being one person, but one person should encourage other people to get more involved so that we can continue to build our union.
Now, I'm not looking for any kind of insider information from the academy, but when you're teaching in the academy, is there anything that kind of perks your ears on saying like, man, they're going to make like a really good activist. They're going to stick with it?
Not one particular thing. There's things that I listen to even from day one, when you guys are doing the shield. Like I take notes on what you guys are saying, even when you're doing the shield, and pay attention to everything that you guys are doing from week 1 to week 3, and then see how much you guys grow from week 1 to week 3. So there's not one particular thing that you guys do, but we see how much you grow, and then we also follow up and see what you guys are doing 6 months, a year, and after that to see how much you're growing as well.
That's really cool. That's cool to hear that you guys follow up after and kind of track us, see what we're doing.
Yes, and when I see your business agents, I talk to your business agents about you guys, and it might be even 2 or 3 years. I'm still asking your business agents about you guys, seeing how you guys are doing. And we're like a family. Like I still talk to people in the Leadership Academy, and like I still talk to people in my learning team. One of the girls a couple of classes ago just had a baby. I kind of feel like it's my grandbaby. So it's the Leadership Academy teaches us that we are another branch of our union family.
Yeah, I find it really cool that most people that at least I've interviewed, or I just recently went to my first convention, my first rap session this year. How many people have actually graduated from the Leadership Academy and seeing the roles that they're in now?
Right. It gives you a deeper appreciation for our union, and hopefully it may encourage people to want to pay it forward and to continue to get deeper involved in our union.
Is there any advice that you would give to maybe a new activist or a new person who wants to try and start getting involved?
Don't let anything stop you, because there are a lot of things that may try to stop you from getting involved. But if this is what you want, you find somebody that's going to encourage you, and somebody that you can trust, and someone that you can vent to, because there's going to always be obstacles. And then once you find that one person, you find what your niche is, and you don't stop, and have a goal.
Yeah, that's really good advice. With the division and stuff that we've got going on, a lot of people, aren't happy with the new contract coming out, things like that. And do you think, what do you think is so important about our union that sets us apart from everybody else?
That sets us apart is how much we care. Because no matter how much division that we're going through right now, what you see is passion. You see passion from both sides, and that means a lot. You did not hear that much from the other unions the way that you hear from our membership right now.
That's true.
So with that same energy that we have, once we get past that, now we need to use that energy to make our union even stronger than it has ever been.
I've had a couple conversations with Mac Julian about it because I know his branch went through like this huge overhaul. And I was trying to ask him, like, how do I get people to come back? And people were wanting to come to the meeting and they wanted to express their opinions on the tentative agreement. And I thought, if that's what gets people in the door, that's what gets them in the door. I mean, it really doesn't matter what gets them there, but maybe getting them there, getting that exposure is going to get them excited and see how things are done and decide, hey, I want to come more. I want my voice to be heard. And so I'm really hoping that even though there is division, like you said, it actually brings us together and makes us stronger.
We will get through this difficult time, and that when we do get through this difficult time, we're going to be stronger than ever. And this is the time, like, I see so many young people getting involved, and we have like different programs that are coming along, such as the women's mentoring group. And the one thing that I see is that people want to get involved. So we have to find different ways to get people more involved in our union, because if we find ways to get more people involved in our union and different programs and things, it's only going to make our union even stronger. We're going to always be better, stronger together.
I do have a leadership question. So I saw a lot of people putting in applications and stuff during the convention. And I think right after the convention, it was all over the website. Do you want to give a plug for the Leadership Academy as to why people should apply?
Absolutely. If you want to sharpen your tools as a leader, the Leadership Academy be the best thing for you to do is to join the Leadership Academy to sharpen your tools as a leader.
Fantastic. Okay, we are nearing the end. We have one more guest to speak to, and it's a national officer.
I am Mac Julian. I am currently the Assistant Secretary Treasurer of the National Association of Letter Carriers. And so we're going to go, do you want me to go into how I got here, or just the question as it was asked?
How you became a carrier. Everybody's got a story.
Everybody's got a story, so at this time, it was roughly in the latter part of the 90s, and I was married with 4 kids. I was a substance abuse counselor, later, got my degree in mental health, substance abuse counseling. And I was married with 4 little children, and that job was not paying quite as much as I needed to get by at that time with my family. And, like many people then, when you fill out an application to work for the post office, you hope that maybe you'll hear from them, don't think much of it. And I really believe although I began in 97, I may have taken the test in about 94. I mean, I've forgotten I had actually taken the test. Then I get this letter from the post office, and they call my number. And and the funny thing about it is, I was a program coordinator at this facility. I oversaw 3 treatment facilities and outpatient treatment facilities. And I told the Postal Service that they gave me a date to report. And I told them that I had to give my job a 2-week notice. I couldn't just up and leave my job. And I never forget the woman when I talked to her on the phone, she got silent, like, this is a job for the Postal Service. We don't care anything about it. If you don't make this, you probably won't get the job. I'm like, well, I'm not going to just leave my job without giving them a 2-week notice. I don't know what I was thinking saying that, but fortunately, she called me back and she said, you know what? We have another orientation in 2 weeks. You're lucky. And so she slotted me in September the 13th, 1997. I began my career with the Postal Service. And oddly enough, and we see that as it relates to the struggles that a lot of our new hires have, and the wages within the letter carrier craft now, the difference in wages. When I started as a part-time flexi. So I started as a career employee. And it was like $13 an hour. But just to give you an idea, the job that I was working as a substance abuse counselor, I was making roughly $27,000 a year, which was okay at that time. And here I am starting at the post office for roughly about the same. But that first year in the post office, I made like $39,000, $40,000, with the overtime. And of course, the benefits that came with it. And, I just really haven't looked back since. And I can tell you another piece to that is that the Postal Service used to have their own internal EAP like system set up. I mean, it was like run by the Postal Service. It was not outsourced through whatever network that they had. And I was told that, after a year, because of my background and my degree in my background in counseling, I could possibly, do that for the Postal Service. And that was literally my intent, do this carrying thing for a year, get into the counseling. But you know what? I really like carrying mail. First, I like carrying mail. I didn't like the supervisors, but I like carrying mail. And after that first year, the Postal Service has stopped their own internal EAP. So the opportunity didn't even exist for me anymore. But I like being a letter carrier.
I think that happens to all of us, honestly. We're like, oh, we're not going to do this forever. And then something happens and we stick with it. It's funny how that works.
I mean, it's like, and an old timer told me this, like, you're getting paid to exercise. You're getting paid to, and I'm an outgoing person. I like to talk to people, and, you meet a lot of interesting people. And once you're out the office, it's just you and your work. I'm the type of person, I don't need micromanaging. I don't like people looking over my shoulder. And once you get out the office, man, it's just you and your customers. And I love it.
So that leads to my next question.
Okay.
What encouraged you to join the union? Did you become a union member right at orientation?
Absolutely. I don't even remember if it was a hard sell. I guess that, the union people came in. I remember the president at that time coming in, giving their spiel about why to join the union. And I didn't have 1 second thought about that. For one, I started carrying mail in Chicago. Chicago is very much a union town. It's just like what you do. I mean, my family, my father was the vice president. He worked for Uniwar. He was the vice president of the tire workers in Chicago. My mom was a seamstress. She was a union steward at the place that she worked at that time. You joined the union, duh. I mean, like I said, it wasn't a hard sell. And that is from the perspective of not really being knowledgeable about unions, other than you join the union. You have a union job, you join it. That's what you do. So
Okay. Okay. So it's a family thing for sure.
it's a family, it's a cultural thing here in Chicago. Chicago is very much a union town, literally. More local ones here than anywhere else. Chicago is union.
So, why do you think that unions are so important?
Oh, unions are important because just the whole concept of, people sticking together and fighting for their rights or standing up for their rights together. Um, you know, and you see it a lot of times in the workplace. I guess is a reason why a lot of us get involved, where you see management bullying certain people, and um, if and there's a saying that if you don't know your rights, you don't have any, and so management tries to play off the ignorance of the membership, and it's just not whether it's the post office, any other uh, uh, workforce that is unionized. It is the group aspect of us collectively being together and fighting for our rights and standing up for our rights or advocating for more rights. So that's what, yeah, unions are definitely important. And just the whole concept of it is what makes us strong.
Can you tell me what made you answer that call to step up and be a union activist? Like, what was that moment when something happened and you're like, you know what, this isn't right. I'm going to do something?
Wow. So I told you, background family, right? So you would think naturally, if there was an opportunity to get involved, um, that I would take it because but I wasn't that involved in unionism other than, hey, I joined the union. So what happened in my workplace, I was in an office. It was a pretty big office relative to the size of a lot of offices. I mean, we had 100 carriers in that office. That's one unit. And our union steward at that time, Doug, he got an assignment. He was able to get an assignment at another station in Chicago. We have roughly about 54 different units within this installation. And if assignments become available in another office, you bid to them. And he bid it to, a downtown office, which, it adds some years to your career. Working in the downtown area. So, we were happy for him, but he was the union steward. And in that office, I won't forget because I had recently transferred into that office myself. I would say I was probably there for less than 6 months and nobody else wanted to do the job. 100 carriers, no one else wanted the job. Now I've had somewhat of a feisty attitude and a mouth on me. And I come from another office where, I would say that, they thought that I was kind of a problem child because I would speak up, especially once I became a regular. So, no, after I made my probation, once I was locked in, I guess you could say, but no one wanted to do the job. And literally, it was like, people, asking other carriers. And I heard this young lady, I'll never forget, she's in management now, upper management too. She was a part-time flexi. And she asked someone, she said, hey, don't that union thing pay? Man, I can use the extra money. I'll do that. And I'm like, and not because she was a part-time flexi, right? Because, they were union members too. But just the idea that she was going to do this for some extra money. And like I said, I kind of had a mouth on me and I found myself in situations. I didn't need a part-time flexi who could be compromised, who was doing the job just for the money to represent me. And it was another brother in the station, and we were talking about it. He said, hey, if you step up and do it, he said, I did it before. He said, I think you have the right attitude. If you stepped up to do it, I'll be your assistant. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, I'll do it. And that was the beginning. At some point within that, I can say I was bitten by that bug that really took it to the next level. Or, I mean, honestly, just by my nature, once I do something, I go all in. And so, although this was something that I wasn't looking for, and it had kind of found me, I started liking it. You know, the more I knew our rights, and it was like, what? But what really turned, and I told this story several times, what really got me totally in was my station manager. She was Miss Perkins. She was very stern. In fact, in retrospect, we could use more Perkins because she made us wear the uniform. We had a respect for the job that you don't see with a lot of I wouldn't say the new hires. I would say the management team, because ultimately they're responsible for the behavior. I went to her because they were drafting me for overtime. And I know the other station that I had previously worked, they weren't drafting in the same manner that they was. In fact, a lot of the times they didn't draft everybody. This office just drafted everybody, and they said, hey, if they didn't need you, you can go with it. Like, that don't seem like the right way to do it. So I went to her and I told her, I don't think that they're doing this draft thing right. And I'm not quite sure where it is in the contract, but I know this is not how you're supposed to do it. And I had the contract in my hand, and she looked at me and she looked at the contract and she said, well, you know, Mac, I just want to do right. I just want us to be able to work together and do things the right way. You show me in this contract where it's wrong, we'll do it the right way. We'll do it that way. Otherwise, this is the right way. So if we're doing that wrong, show it to me. And if there's anything else we're doing wrong, just let me know. We'll get it right. And it literally felt like she had just kind of like pet me on my head and told me to go about my business. You know, I was standing there in the middle of the floor. I felt somewhat humiliated because I didn't know what I was approaching her with. She said, hey, whatever it is that we're violating, you show me. So I took that challenge. I read the contract. I became knowledgeable of the contract. I became knowledgeable of the M39. I became knowledgeable of the M41. So I went back to her and I showed her a whole lot of stuff that they weren't doing right. And she was ticked off, to say the least. But that was fun for me. It was fun to know, you know, like I said, the saying, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. I began to know my rights and the rights of our members. And I really enjoyed fighting on behalf of our members and enlightening our members in terms of the rights that they have and that they didn't know that they had.
So, besides being a steward, what other positions have you held?
Okay, so at that time, it was one of the officers down at Branch 11, T.L. Willis. He was my chief steward. We were broken into different sections, and he was my chief steward. And a lot of the people who eventually became a part of my team worked under Tim Willis. I later became the sergeant. Yeah. First was the sergeant at arms, because the leadership in our branch was, you know, it was a transitional period for us. They were starting to retire, and positions became available, and I became the sergeant at arms. And I eventually became the auditor of the branch, and the positions opened up. I bumped up, and I had an opportunity to go to the Leadership Academy, which totally opened my eyes to a lot of things within our union and unionism in general. At that point, I can say I was really all in. So I started off as a branch sergeant at arms. I became an auditor for the branch. At that time, a position became available This was just crazy. It was because of my time at the Leadership Academy, Executive Vice President at the time, Jimmy Williams. I think they became somewhat aware of my potential when I was at the Leadership Academy. And when a position became available within this region, seeking to fill the position with someone from Branch 11, or not necessarily just Branch 11, who they thought would be fit. I was tapped by Bill Younger to be next RAA out of the region. It was someone from my branch who had the position. She stepped down. I became an RAA, and that experience, along with the Leadership Academy, not only opened my eyes to a lot of the union stuff. I thought that my local union could do a lot better than what it was. We were a giant. I heard so many stories about Branch 11 back in the day, and the things that we did, and the togetherness, and how we really stood 10 toes down, together. But I didn't see that kind of a union, even though I had been a sergeant at arms, even though I'd been an RT. All of the officers that I worked with at that time, I thought that we can do things differently, that we can do things to get the members more involved. And I decided that even though I was an RAA, that I wanted to go back to be the president of Branch 11 and change my branch. I just thought that we were too big of a branch to be, quite candidly, as weak as we were. And the potential was there, and we needed to be more aggressive. And so that was, I ran for president of Branch 11, had a whole team with me. We called it the Action Slate. And my philosophy then and now, it still is, that we were going to bring a different kind of representation to Branch 11. It was going to be aggressive representation of our members. The same thing that I found that worked for me in the office. I thought that, maybe this installation wide. And that was simply keeping management on their toes. I protected my members because I took a more aggressive approach, that I kept management on their heels, that they didn't have time to write my members up because I would write them up. Things that they weren't doing, whether it was safety or anything else in the office that they should have been doing. Like I said, I became familiar with the M39, the M41, their tactics, mutual respect on the workroom floor, and management's responsibility to maintain an atmosphere of mutual respect in the workplace. I beat them up with it. I beat them up with the 1260 violations. I was aggressively representing the members. I wasn't sitting back waiting for someone to get written up because of attendance, because they're not having a uniform, or for whatever reason that they pick on letter carriers. Management was on their guard against me, finding something that they weren't doing right. And so that's the approach that we took, and it's been very successful for the branch. It's really turned the branch around. We garnered a lot of respect from postal management in Chicago, and quite a bit of money too. So because they don't want to follow the rules. But so I was branch president. Along with that, later President Rolando tapped me to be a national officer part-time. I was a trustee. At the same time, I was on the executive board of the Chicago Federation of Labor. And I really felt good about that because the NALC did not have a seat at the table in Chicago. Again, we were a big giant. We were a recluse. And one of the things was I opened us up to the labor movement, the bigger labor movement in Chicago. Chicago is a pure labor town. And I became involved as, we were fighting for postal reform. I sold our members on the fact that, hey, if we want people to stand lockstep with us, we have to stand lockstep with them. So we were out there marching, fighting for 15, and every with the hotel workers in Chicago, just pick a picket line, we'd get on it with them. And in turn, they did that for us. So I became a part of Chicago Federation of Labor Executive Board, Bank Labor Council, the University of Illinois, Chicago Labor Board that they had. And from there, eventually, I became the Assistant Secretary Treasurer. The opportunity presented itself. Brian, President Renfro, approached me about possibly running with his team he was putting together. He was excited about it. And it was hard for me because I really didn't necessarily want to leave Chicago. I'm the president of Branch 11 Chicago. I thought it was a good time to go with the fact that President Rolando was leaving, and I felt that really all the experience that I brought to the table as being a president for 13 years in Chicago would be helpful with this regime, with this administration. So I decided, I decided to take him up on the offer and became a part of, and became a national officer on his team.
How would you say, from your level now, you promote union activism?
Oh my God. As you see firsthand with the presentation at the Leadership Academy, when I have an opportunity to travel and to go out to different branches, no matter what the event, I really like to engage with the membership, whether it's a branch meeting or an event. I do try to reach out to those people who are just getting involved and kind of see where I like to see that fresh energy. More than anything, one of the things I do a lot when I'm here in Chicago is I still go to the workroom floor. Not only because I have a lot of friends there, and they supported me, they elected me 5 times. I like to be around the members. I like to be around the letter carriers. I'm a letter carrier, and so to keep in touch with what's really going on, what's impacting us, there's no better place to get it than right there on the workroom floor. Yeah, so I'm always encouraging people to get involved. That the change that they're looking for a lot of the times is something that they have inside of them. You can't always look for someone else to do for what that you yourself can do. Look, you heard about how I got started. I was not looking to do this. It kind of pulled me in. And to be honest with you, I'm glad I did.
So again, looking at your hierarchy as far as where you are within the union, what are some characteristics that you kind of look for when you're going to the Leadership Academy or you're being exposed to other carriers and whatnot? What kind of things just kind of perk your ears up about, what? I think they'd be a really good activist.
Literally, by the time we interact or engage with people at our level, they're generally on the road, if you will, to union leadership, not just activism, but just leadership in general. I can't say that there's anything that I like really look for in people other what perks my ear when I hear the next generation, I like to call you all the next generation of leadership, is the reason why people are involved. If you recall, I said that I was concerned to the extent I did something about it when the young lady said that she wanted to do it for the money. And I knew that not only if you're not doing it for the right reason, and in her case, in that instant, you can be compromised. I can't have you representing me. I got too much of a mouth on me. But I'm delighted when I hear people talk about why they're doing it, and they're doing it for the right reason. We tell people all the time, just as it was told to us when I was in the leadership academy, and I really went back and really like used that when I was seeking out people within my branch. Everybody can't be the president or secretary or the treasurer. I mean, there's only so many positions, but there's a whole lot of stuff within the branch that needs to be done. And I like literally encourage people to, as the saying go, get in where you fit in. Somebody have to be the key person to put that picnic together, right? Picnic is a big undertaking. We have a lot of events at Branch 11 that we didn't have prior to my team taking over in 2010, and we would not have been successful if we were not able to engage people, encourage people to get involved. There's always that person. I always say in the office, like within my branch, as president, I had like 64 different officers, right? And in that, you'll find that even though you had the union steward, in a lot of those offices, the most influential person in that office was not the union steward. That's the person that everyone engaged with, everyone listened to, whether this person be a senior carrier or just someone who's respected, and they'll tell you that they do not want to do anything other than what they do. I'll help with this, I'll help with that, but I'm not helping people with all their problems and all of this. They tell you some of them need to go anyway. So I encourage people to take on whatever role that suited them, that fit them, that was a fit for them, to get them involved in the union. And lo and behold, some people, they start off, they would just do grievances and they would eventually do more. There were those who I'll never forget. I was influential. I was talking to the state president and getting someone in my branch to be a part of the state board. And he later came back to me and said, "Hey, look, I appreciate it. I know we were stewards around the same time and you wanted to get me involved, but," he said, "I'm not really interested in all this this stuff." He said, "I like to do grievances," because he was one of my former A-reps and he was good at what he was doing. And he said, "Man, so if somebody else want to do their job, I mean, man, you officer for the state, I think I find somebody else in the branch, yeah, to represent Chicago." But that's the kind of spirit that I like. Being honest when you're saying this isn't something for me, but I can do that. Too many people are just. And I was talking with a friend today. I was talking to a friend today about people who wanted to do jobs just for the title. And that's just not, they, want to, hey, look at me, I'm the president. Hey, look at me, I'm the vice president. There's a lot of work that it involves. So what really perks my ears when I hear people who talk about that, talk about why they're doing it, and it's for the right reason. More often than not, like all of us, there is this disdain for the bullying attitude and behavior of management that they always go to the weak ones, right? They pick on them. They always have pivots. They always have downtime because they know they're scared, right? People have bills to pay, and whether it's a man or a woman, these bullies, they know no boundaries in terms of who they will bully. And that just ticks me off to see that, because they're doing it to these people. Because particularly when I started, working for the post office is a damn good job. It was akin to winning the lottery. Like, really, I got that letter, the benefits, the TSP, all of that. I mean, when you think about the fact that I started saying, like, don't sound like, well, yeah, I started at $13 an hour, right? On that pay scale, if we were kept true to that pay scale, that carriers will be coming in the post office making like $31 an hour as a career job. That's like winning the lottery, right? That's what that was. That's what that $13 represented at that time. So you have people who not only at some point they like their job, but they don't want to lose it either, and management knows that, and they pick on these people, and a lot of us get involved because we don't like bullies. We don't like that attitude. We don't like carriers being mistreated on the workroom floor. That stuff ticks me off, to no end. And I'm gonna tell you that our members, letter carriers, are not slow by a long shot. Letter carriers are not dumb. Whoever they elect, for better or for worse, is who they want, right? And you try to go to letter carriers and BS them, they'll see right through it. My motive had always been to do what was right by the letter carriers, represent them aggressively, have a whole lot of respect for, I tell people all the time, the man and women who lace their shoes up every day to do the job that we do. So yeah, that's what perks my ears. That's what gets my attention. If the motives are right, if you're doing it for the right reason. Not only do it get my attention, it catch those of letter carriers too. They know if you're doing it for the right reason.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, just hypothetically, you come across a letter carrier, doesn't matter how many years of service,
Okay.
who just didn't join the union for whatever reason.
Scab. That's what we call them in Chicago. They say I was harsh. A damn scab.
So,
I post their name on the bulletin board in my station to let all the members know.
Oh no, you don't.
We only had one person, and we had a conflictual relationship, to say the least.
Okay.
Because I posted her name on that bulletin board. She later joined the union, became one of my biggest supporters as I moved up in the union, became branch president. And she would tell people this one truth, that even though she was not a member, I represented her as hard as I represented everybody else. Because I knew that if I allowed them to screw over Carolyn, they can screw over anybody else in that office. So I wasn't merely fighting for her rights. I was fighting for the rights of the other letter carriers in the office. But did you finish the question, or did I just jump in right away?
No, you just jumped right in, but it was great. I was just going to ask, what would you tell that carrier to convey to them the importance of being a union member? How would you convince them?
Well, as the president, I did the orientation along with my recording secretary, and sometimes the vice president at that time. I did each and every orientation because I wanted the new members to know who I was, right? And of course, then doing the orientation was selling on the union. I talked about the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the whole concept of being unionism. The very fact that the NALC is as democratic a union as you're ever going to see anywhere. I was a Teamster once. I worked for UPS. I worked with United Food and Commercial Work. I was a bagger in high school. I was in that union there. I'm always, you get a job in Chicago, they got a union, you join it. Duh. Whether you have to do it or not. I mean, you join the union. So with this experience, what I've seen with the NALC, the democratic process of the NALC, but more importantly, is that we can do more together than we could be divided. And management is always seeking to divide, so you become a part of this. Hell, it was a big selling point that nationwide, I think we're like 94% organized. And that includes red states. That includes red states. Everybody is in Chicago. And 94% organized. Of course, here in Chicago, we're 97, 98, right? That tells you that at least 9.5 out of every 10 carriers in on the workroom floor belong to the union. That means we got to be doing something right, right? Everybody that you see on the, potentially, and most of our workplaces, most of our units were like that. It was 100% union. So you sell them on the fact that all of us being a part of this organization is what make us stronger in terms of fighting for our rights, advocating for our rights, sticking together. And I would tell them, oh my God, this is a orientation spiel that I had. I literally would tell them the advantage of having, yeah, true enough, you don't have to pay and I have to represent you. But you don't get OWCP. You don't get all of the other stuff that comes with being a part of the NALC. You get the basic representation that is required by the law. And I will always use this analogy, and it's kind of harder because the younger people don't really know about the trial of the century with O.J. Simpson, and I talk about the legal team here. They called them the Dream Team. Johnny Cochran, Shapiro, the Kardashian. This dude had a dream team of lawyers to represent him, and he lived in the United States. Hell, he was O.J. Simpson. And he could have just had a public defender because you're given that in the legal system, right? So why pay all of this money for representation when representation is given to you? Just like that way, we have to represent, right? Well, basically, you get what you pay for.
That's a great answer.
You want the dream team? You want a public defender?
Okay. Yeah, that's
But
absolutely true.
yeah, it is the camaraderie that we have. It is the fact that you're being a part of a great whole, and it speaks for itself when you can use numbers like 94% and 98%. These people are staying in they're not only signing up, but they're staying in. This is not a closed shop. This is a open shop. And sometimes I have to explain that to people. There's some professions where there's a closed shop. You have to join the union to be in there. Whether some of these projects, particularly in Chicago, pipe fitters, carpenters, or whatever you get on the job, you had to have a card. These were closed shops. More particularly with the skilled labor unions than the unskilled. Here it is, an unskilled labor union that is an open shop that you don't have to join, and 98% of the people are a part of it. That tells you something in and of itself. 94%, and again, that includes them red states. The unions don't play well down there, but we're 94% nationwide. That in and of itself says something. You won the lottery. How important it is for you to keep this job is up to you. Because how management can be on the workroom floor, and I don't hesitate to tell them what they're like. You want to go it alone? Have at it. Otherwise, I got your back 24/7. That's my spiel.
Okay. Last question. Are you ready?
Okay.
So, me being a newcomer to union activism, going to Leadership Academy. I'm a steward, OJI. I just became a trustee.
Okay.
What advice would you give to newer activists who are trying to get involved to avoid burnout or feeling overwhelmed? What kind of advice would you give?
I'm probably the wrong person to give any advice on that. I think I just was fortunate that I haven't burnt out, that the fire just has continued to burn on the inside of me. If there's anything that I think that needs to be shared or talked about with those who are getting involved. I remember in the Leadership Academy, I think it was Bill Young talking about it, and one of the brothers in there, he was talking about, that he wouldn't want that life right now because his kids are small. And he said, did you hear what they talk about? The time that they spend away from their families and, missing certain things. I don't want to do that. I don't know why I wasn't attracted to the glamour of, being this person or having a title. I just got so sucked into the unionism stuff. And it is so easy to sacrifice. I mean, look at it. We do. We sacrifice a lot of our time that we can spend with our family, with our kids. I was just cautioning them to remind them, what I was told and what I know firsthand is that you don't get that time back. That you don't get to redo those track meets, those baseball games, those wrestling matches. If this is what you want, that there's going to be sacrifices to do this job, to represent the membership. Even though the members appreciate, it's still a thankless job. One guy, it definitely, if you're doing it for the money, you're definitely doing it for the wrong reason. Because you're going to spend countless amount of hours. People are looking and say, well, national officers make X amount of dollars. Well, these national officers are away from their family. They're living in DC, which is not a very cheap place to live. The travel to just get home is on your own dime when you want to go back home, if that is still home. Otherwise, you're uprooting and moving your whole family to another place. And again, that still comes with all that other sacrificing that we talk about, but even more so. A lot of traveling. The more you move up in the union, the more time consuming it can become. If you're doing it for the right reason, if you're going all in, if you represent the members the way that you should, understand what you're undertaking. Work hard, watch others. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. And you know whether this is for you, and even more, the members will know whether you're for them.
All right. Well,
Um,
thank you for spending time with me and helping me out with this project. And hopefully it'll be on that Leadership Academy YouTube page soon and you can see the whole thing.
okay, sounds good.
All
Appreciate it.
right. That's a wrap, Union Nerds. Hope you enjoyed listening, and thank you to all my guest speakers that came on and let me interview them for my podcast. Please take a moment to look at the Leadership Academy YouTube channel. There's so much useful information on there and projects and presentations that they have kept record of over the years. Who knows, you might find something useful or something that you can use for your branch. Stay tuned. I might have another episode coming out, and maybe I'll keep this podcast ball rolling. And after the exit music, you can listen to a short little extra of me and Dan Versluis, my Region 4 MBA, having a conversation about my Week 1 Leadership Academy project. Until then, talk to you. I don't know, man. That first project was a whopper, let me tell you.
Yeah, but you know what though? You really did a good job. I really liked it.
It's you got to have the passion for it. And when
Yes.
they said, go look at the examples of, projects, they had all the, the reports and pamphlets and things that people have done over the years. And I was like, man, like nothing's really grabbing my attention. Like, so if it's not grabbing my attention, how can I expect whoever I'm presenting it to grab their attention? So I'm like, I got to do something different. It's got to be out of the box.
Yes.
And
Well,
so
it's funny. When I was in, there was only 2 classes before me, so there wasn't much to look at for projects. You know what I mean? I think they did a
I
letter.
love how Ed's got it all set up where he publishes anything that's visual onto the Leadership Academy YouTube page, which I think
Oh,
is
nice.
great because then anybody can watch it or use it. Or I had a couple people ask if I would share my movie I did so that they
Nice.
could, share it at their branch or whatever they wanted to do with it. And so I told them, hey, go to the page, go check it out, So it's exciting. I love it. I love using my little odd and end skills that I have to like try and put these projects together. But
Nice.
one more week. One more week.
Outstanding. All right. Well, I know you will get it done. Very, very proud of you. Happy to be able to do this. And so thank you. I
Yeah,
really do
thank
appreciate
you.
it.